Assalamualaikum and a very good day to our beloved lecturer, Dr. Susila, Dr. Amir and our respective classmates. Today, me, Adriana Miza and Nur Maisara Husna will discuss ASEAN's relationship with three major powers, China, United States and India. So for each of these countries brings a different type of influence to Southeast Asia. China offers economic integration through trade, investment and infrastructure. The United States provides military protection, technological innovation and security cooperation, while India focuses on cultural connections, maritime cooperation and a non-threatening partnership. So this brings us to our discussion question. So if we look at the toolkits of these three major powers, which influence is the hardest for ASEAN to resist or live without? And among economic integration, military protection and non-threatening partnership, which creates the greatest influence over ASEAN today? So to answer this question, we will examine each power strengths and how ASEAN responds to them. So first, let us look at China. So China is often described as ASEAN's economic engine. So one major reason is infrastructure investment. So through the Belt and Road Initiative, China has funded railway, ports, highways and many other development projects across Southeast Asia. So China is also ASEAN's largest trading partner. Many ASEAN countries depend heavily on China imports, exports, tourism, investment and manufacturing supply chains. So as an example, we can see Malaysia, where we can see in the automotive sectors especially, where mostly Chinese car brands are dominate such as BYD, Chery, Zeekr, XPeng and also Geely that acquired Proton. So this means that China's economy is deeply connected to ASEAN's economy. So as shown in the slide, there are three reasons why China matters. So firstly, China is ASEAN's largest trading partner. Second, ASEAN and China are connected through regional supply chains, meaning many products are produced using materials and components that move between ASEAN and China. As example, we can see through semiconductor. And thirdly is ACFTA 3.0 during ASEAN Summit last year is expanding cooperation into new areas such as artificial intelligence, digital economy and green technology. So some ASEAN countries worry about becoming too dependent on China, but interdependence between countries can gain benefits for both sides. However, ASEAN stands to be neutral. So as we can see that over 80 Chinese firms now operate in Penang E&E ecosystem. So Chinese companies like Star5 and Tongfu Microelectronics are expanding their Malaysian facilities where it creates job opportunities. So economically, ASEAN needs China. Strategically, ASEAN remains cautious. Lastly, we'll be looking on United States. So if China is ASEAN economic engine, then the United States is ASEAN security guarantor. So the US brings something China cannot easily provide, which is military strength and high-tech investment. So the United States Navy plays an important role in keeping important sea lanes open. So this helps ensure freedom of navigation and supports international trade. So many ASEAN countries also maintain defense partnership with the United States to balance China's growing influence in the region. So this is why we often say that the United States creates security dependence. As shown in the slide, this includes freedom of navigation, South China Sea stability and defense partnership. So besides security, the United States is also a major source of innovations. Companies such as Google, Apple and Microsoft have invested heavily in ASEAN's digital economy. So this investment create jobs, encourage innovation and support technological development. The United States also promotes a rules-based international order, transparency and democratic values. So therefore, ASEAN benefits from both the security and technological contributions of the United States. At this point, I would like to pass the presentation to Maisara, who will discuss India's role and ASEAN's overall strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Now let's look at India's role in ASEAN. So compared to China and the United States, India's approach is quite different. So if China is known for its economic power and the US is known for its military strength, India here is often seen as a trusted friend. Why? This is because ASEAN and India share a very long history that goes back more than 2,000 years through trade, religion and cultural exchanges. For example, we can still see Indian influence today in places like Bali in Indonesia, where Balinese Hinduism is highly visible there, and Angkor Wat in Cambodia. So the connection between ASEAN and India is not something new, as it has existed for centuries. Besides culture, India is also becoming more active in maritime security. Both ASEAN and India support freedom of navigation and safe sea routes in the Indo-Pacific region. This is important because many ASEAN economies depend heavily on trade through the sea, because most of our goods, electronics and food travel by cargo ships. Plus, the Strait of Malacca is the ultimate highway for oil tankers. So if these sea routes become unsafe or blocked, factories cannot run and our economy will also be badly affected. Another thing that makes India attractive is that it is generally seen as a non-threatening partner. In simple terms, India doesn't really force ASEAN countries to choose side between major powers. Its Act East policy, India focuses more on cooperation, connectivity and mutual development. However, India also has its limitations. Although it has strong cultural ties with ASEAN, its economic influence is still much more smaller compared to China, and its military presence is also not as significant as the United States. Because of this, India is usually seen as alternative partner rather than the dominant power in Southeast Asia. So while India may not have the strongest economy or military influence, it provides ASEAN with something valuable, which is another option. And for ASEAN, having more options means having more strategic flexibility. Now, let's compare the three powers side by side. When we look at the table, we can see that each country brings different type of influence to ASEAN. China's main strength is economic integration and infrastructure development. The United States provides military protection and technological investments. Meanwhile, India contributes through cultural ties and maritime cooperation. So the question here is, which type of influence gives the greatest leverage over ASEAN today? If we look at ASEAN's level of dependence, China ranks the highest here. Why? This is because ASEAN's economic growth is closely linked to China's through trade, investment, manufacturing, and supply chains. For example, look at our electronics. Critical components are made in China, shipped to factories in Malaysia or Vietnam for assembly, and funded by massive Chinese investments. If China's economic slows down, our factories and jobs feel the impact immediately. In simple terms, many ASEAN countries can survive without choosing a side politically, but it would be very difficult to avoid the economic impact if trade with China suddenly slowed down. The United States remained extremely important as well, especially in maintaining regional security and stability. Many ASEAN countries still value the US presence because it helps maintain a balance of power in the region. For example, look at the South China Sea. It's like a massive public highway for the world trade. But China is trying to claim that the whole road is theirs. So what does the US do? They do regularly send their warships to patrol the area, basically telling everyone this is international waters and anyone can sail here. So for smaller nations like ASEAN, having the US military around is like having a big brother that protects our backyard. India also plays an important role, but its influence is more moderate because its economy and military reach is still smaller compared to China and the United States. Of course, each partnership comes with its own risk. With China, there are concerns about overdependence and losing strategic autonomy. With the US, ASEAN sometimes faces pressure from the growing US-China competition. And for India, the challenge is simply that its economic influence is not large yet enough to compete with the other two powers. So based on our analysis, we believe that China's economic leverage is currently the hardest for us ASEAN to resist. However, this does not mean that China is the most powerful in every aspect. The real source of influence is the ability to create dependence. As we mentioned previously, China creates economic dependence, the US creates security dependence, and India provides ASEAN with strategic flexibility and another options beside the two major rivals. So at the moment, economic dependence gives China the strongest and most consistent influence because development and economic growth remain top priorities for most ASEAN countries. In conclusion, from this observation, we can see ASEAN strategy whereby ASEAN does not simply choose one power and ignore the others. Instead, ASEAN engages with all three powers simultaneously. This strategy is known as hedging, and rather than depending completely on one country, ASEAN maintains good relationship with multiple major powers so that it can maximize the benefits while minimizing the risks. This allows ASEAN to avoid becoming overly dependent on a single country. Now, after discussing and comparing all top three powers, we agreed that China's influence is currently the hardest for ASEAN to resist. If ASEAN continue or were forced to choose only one partner today, our answer will be China. Why? Because China's influence is deeply embedded in ASEAN's economy through trade, investment, infrastructure projects, and manufacturing supply chains. Economic growth remains the top priority for most ASEAN countries, and China plays a major role in supporting that growth. So I guess that is all from us. Thank you.